It takes two people to make you and one people to die. That's how the world is going to end. I said to Dewey Dell, you want her to die so you can get to town, is that it? She wouldn't say what we both knew. The reason you will not say it is, when you say it, even to yourself, you will know it is true, is that it? But you know it is true now. I can almost tell you the day when you knew it was true. Why won't you say it, even to yourself? She will not say it. She just keeps on saying, are you going to tell Pa? Are you going to kill him? You cannot believe it is true because you cannot believe that Dewey Dell Bundren, could have such bad luck. Is that it? The sun, an hour above the horizon, is poised like a bloody egg upon the crest of thunderheads. The light has turned copper. In the eye, portentous. In the nose, sulphurous, smelling of lightning. Welcome to Positive Read-Ins. That was an excerpt from William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, published in 1930. I've been meaning to do a video on this for a long time, but this is a challenging book. There's so many things I want to talk about here. It's one of my favorite novels, and I just didn't know where to go with this. So I think my plan is going to be to just try to move in a chronological order with the passages that I'm looking at and try to just talk about some general themes and an overview of the book. Before I do that, though, please check out my novel in the description. You can link to it, you can order it, you can support this channel, and you can also support new literature. Please check it out. Thank you. As I Lay Dying is often considered the great modernist novel, published about maybe 8 years after Ulysses, James Joyce's kind of the great modernist novel. There's a lot of experimentation going on in As I Lay Dying. The novel is written in a series of monologues, each one told in the first person. We have a big cast of characters, the Bundren family, but we also have other people, neighbors, other people in the town. This novel is set in Yoknapatawpha County, which is this fictionalized version of Faulkner's own hometown. And the novel essentially talks about this odyssey, this journey of the Bundrens taking their mother, Addie, who has died, and they're bringing her to town. But as we go through, we find out that a lot of these characters have ulterior motives for going there. The husband, Ants, wants to get some new teeth and eventually gets a new wife as well. Dewey Dell, as we were just reading about, she is pregnant unwantedly and is trying to get an abortion. We have Vardaman, the youngest, who wants to get this train that he's heard about, that the rich kids in the town has. Cash is the carpenter. He wants to get this gramophone player and maybe some other tools. That seems to be what he's focused on all the time. Jewel does not have a really ulterior motive for going. He is associated with the horse. He ends up losing that horse. So the whole family kind of loses everything, even though the father comes out, Ants comes out on top. Darl, who is narrating the part I was just reading, he's our main character. He has powers that allows him to communicate clairvoyantly, or powers that allow him to communicate telepathically with his sister, Dewey Dell, and also his older brother, Cash, the carpenter. He also is clairvoyant, and he can see things that are happening. He narrates things. In some ways, he acts as a third-person narrator and narrates things that he can't actually be present for. This novel is a dark comedy. It has a lot of themes. It's complex. A big theme is death. Another one would be marriage. In some ways, it's a critique, again, a comedy, a dark comedy about marriage. It's also plays around with time and what time means to us, with the future, what we want, and also the past, how it shapes our lives. So as I go through, I'm going to try to just read some passages that highlight different themes, but also maybe just good examples of great writing. First one I wanted to look at was the Dr. Peabody. He comes. He is a comedic character. He's this very large, so large he can't even walk up the hill where the Bundrins live. He has to get pulled up, and it's kind of some really bizarre descriptions. Like how maybe far-fetched too. Are they really going to pull this guy up with a rope up the hill? But that's what they do because he's too big. And while he's there, he also has some insightful things to say about life and death. The girl is standing by the bed, fanning her. So this would be Dewey Dell fanning her mother as her mother's dying. When we enter, she turns her head and looks at us. That's Addie, the dying mother. She has been dead these 10 days. Again, she's not really dead, but he's saying she's essentially a goner. I suppose it's having been a part of Ants for so long that she cannot even make that change, if change it be. So Ants is known throughout this story as not being able to make any decisions. He's constantly getting other people to help him. So again, so that in itself is a joke. She's been part of Ants for so long that she can't even make the decision to die. That change, and that he says, if that is a change, and this is where we're going to get some reflections on death. I can remember how when I was young, I believed death to be a phenomenon of the body. Now I know it to be merely a function of the mind, and that of the minds of the ones who suffer the bereavement. The nihilists say it is the end, the fundamentalists the beginning, when in reality it is no more than a single tenant or family moving out of the tenement or town. So to Peabody, death is really a function of the viewer who's watching it. As he says, it's a function of their mind. And as he says, it's just, in reality, it's just no more than a single tenant or family moving out of a tenement or a town. This is significant because it's going to tie into actually Addie Bundrin's theory of language, which she gives in a later, in her only monologue, which is kind of the centerpiece of this entire novel and could be a video in itself. But she talks about words being just shapes that fill a lack, and how ants kind of fits into this shape. And I think that's the same, this idea that we fit into these shapes and then we move and we're gone. So very much not a materialist view of life, maybe idealist to a certain extent. When Darrell is away from home, his mother's dying, and they decide, Darrell and Jewel, to go on this, to deliver this wood, even though Darrell knows they're not going to make it back in time. It would seem to be he's doing this deliberately, so Jewel can't be with his mother. There is this underlying tension throughout the novel between Darrell and Jewel. Jewel seems to have a real hatred for Darrell. Darrell seems to be maybe upset that Addie, his mother, seems to show him no love, but has a special place for Jewel, or Jewel has a special place in her heart. Reflecting on the night when they're out on this journey. And this is a very famous passage from this book, partly for the confusing language that is being used. In a strange room, you must empty yourself for sleep. And before you are emptied for sleep, what are you? And when you are emptied for sleep, you are not. And when you are filled with sleep, you never were. he seems to be saying there that, we need to empty our minds, and if your mind is empty, you're nothing, right? When you're sleeping, you're basically not alive. I don't know what I am. I don't know if I am or not. Jewel knows he is, because he does not know that he does not know whether he is or not. So Darl's not sure what he is, right? So that's why he doesn't know if he is or is not, like it's alive or not. But Jewel doesn't even think about this, so that's why he is, according to Darl. So he seems to have this idea that almost like ignorance is bliss. Well, if you're ignorant of things, you're just being. But if you're thinking about, if this is the question you're having, well, you're not sure then. So reality is conditioned by our mind and what we believe to be, what we believe reality to be. He cannot empty himself, this Jewel, he cannot empty himself for sleep, because he is not what he is, and he is what he is not. Beyond the unlamped wall, I can hear the rain shaping the wagon that is ours, the load that is no longer theirs, that felled and sawed it, nor yet theirs that bought it, and which is not ours either, lie on our wagon, though it does, since only the wind and the rain shape it only to Jewel and me, that are not asleep. So he goes through talking about this wood that's been cut down, but looking at it as the different people who were involved in the cutting it down, and that belonging to them, or soon not anymore, soon to belong to another people. But here it is, it's out of their lives completely, and it's just Jewel and Darl who are sitting there listening to the rain fall on it, as he says the rain is shaping it. And since sleep is not, and rain and wind are was, it is not. Yet the wagon is, because when the wagon is was, Adibundren will not be. And I think that's a reference to when the wagon is destroyed, because it gets destroyed in this kind of famous scene when they're trying to cross the river. Addie will not be alive by that point. Again, this is the seeing into the future, this clairvoyance that Darl has. And Jewel is, so Adibundren must be. And then I must be, or I could not empty myself for sleep in a strange room. And so, if I am not emptied yet, I am is. How often have I lain beneath rain on a strange roof, thinking of home? And for me, that last line really kind of saves this passage. It's playfully, maybe complex, but he saves it with that last kind of almost line of poetry. It almost feels like a haiku. How often have I lain beneath rain on a strange roof, thinking of home? So it kind of brings him back to, he was playing the philosopher for a little while there, and now he's back to being the artist and connecting with us at a more emotional level, I think. Throughout this novel, there's a kind of anti-modernity vibe to it. There's a class-conscious element to it. The Ants is very much aware that he thinks he's this kind of salt of the earth, hard worker, farmer, even though we're told earlier in the novel that he got sick once being on the sun, and now he believes that if he sweats, he will die. So he doesn't really do anything. But he sees himself as being kind of cleaner than the modern world, and in the modern world as being kind of this evil. Right? He talks about the road being next to their house as bringing bad luck and kind of taking the family members away. He doesn't like it. On one passage here, he says, "It's a hard country on men. It's hard. 8 miles of the sweat of his body washed up out of the Lord's earth, where the Lord himself told him to put it. Nowhere in this sinful world can an honest, hard-working man profit. It takes them that runs the stores in the towns, doing no sweating, living off of them that sweats. It ain't the hard-working man, the farmer. Sometimes I wonder why we keep at it. It's because there is a reward for us above, where they can't take their autos and such." So he sees the townspeople, just like his son Vardaman sees the townspeople as being having these toys and all these good things. They go into town as a family and they get bananas, I think coffee as well. But he sees this town as being separate from him and kind of a dangerous place, anti-urbanism that we have here. And he sees himself as being this hard worker, and but also a Christian, that he's going to have some reward later for him, as he says, where they can't take their autos, where they can't take all these goods that they have. And that's an element throughout this book, but at the same time, we see that Ants is full of it because he's also putting on, this chapter ends actually with him saying, but now I can get them teeth. That will be a comfort. It will. So again, he's going to get what he wants. There are a number of things that he wants, and he's going to get it by the end. Pivoting back to Darl, he's, as I said, kind of, if this novel had a main character, it would be him. Throughout it, they talk about his strange eyes, and in one passage here being narrated by their neighbor Tull. Tull says, he is looking at me. Darl's looking at him. He don't say nothing, just looks at me with them queer eyes of his'n. That makes folks talk. I always say it ain't never been what he done so much or said or anything so much as how he looks at you. It's like he had got into the inside of you some way. Like somehow you was looking at yourself and your doings out of his eyes. Then I can feel that gal watching me like I had made to touch her. She says something to Ants. And that's Dewey Dell, who is kind of very truculent, especially towards Tull. But as you can see there, we've got Darl. He's this strange person where he looks at you and it makes you feel like you're looking at yourself through him. And that's probably has something to do with how he looks at the world. So very unsettling character we get in Darl. And I think Tull really established it well there. Jewel, with his strange eyes, he also has strange ways of looking at the world, just like that passage we looked at with the time, but also in the rain kind of shaping the wagon. So he has this kind of way of looking at things, which is almost, it almost makes the things seem strange that he's describing. This is a great example when he's watching Jewel, his brother, and the neighbor Vernon Tull try to go walk into this river after they tried to, it's a flooded river, they try to take Addie's body over, it flips over, Cash breaks his leg. This is kind of one of the first big accidents that they have. Jewel and Vernon are in the river again. From here, they do not appear to violate the surface at all. It is as though it had severed them both at a single blow, the two torsos moving with infinitesimal and ludicrous care upon the surface. So we got these, what looks like half body is just kind of moving on this flat water surface. So again, that's that kind of strange perspective that he keeps giving reality. It looks peaceful, like machinery does after you have watched it and listened to it for a long time, as though the clotting, which is you, had dissolved into the myriad original motion, and seeing and hearing in themselves blind and deaf. Fury in itself, quiet with stagnation, squatting Dewey Dell's wet dress shapes for the dead eyes of three blind men those mammalian ludicrosities, which are the horizons and the valleys of the earth. So two things here to point out. One is this, as though the clotting, which is you, had dissolved. Throughout this novel, there is the symbol of blood. Addie talks about this a lot. She calls it the terrible blood. And this blood seems to be almost a Schopenhauerian will, this thing that's kind of in the earth, that's kind of just driving life to continue, to expand, and just kind of perpetuate in this mess of characters in life. And in this description, we are just kind of like these little clots, and then we dissolve back into this full will. The other thing I wanted to point out was with Dewey Dale, right? This is, throughout the novel, there's this incest theme. He's constantly sexualizing Dewey Dale. We got her wet dress here. Earlier in the novel, he talked about her leg being this kind of lever that moves the world, coming out from under her dress. So throughout, we got this sexual imagery of Dewey Dale, which, again, that would be thematic with a lot of Faulkner's work. I'm thinking of The Sound and the Fury, and also Absalom, Absalom. So incest throughout. Developing this theme of the blood. In Addie's section, she's talking about how she has got a very kind of dark view of life. She was a school teacher. Her father told her the only reason, or right here, right? My father used to say that the reason for living was to get ready to stay dead a long time. And when I would have to look at them, the students, day after day, each with his or her secret and selfish thought, and blood strange to each other blood, and strange to mine, and think that this seemed to be the only way I could get ready to stay dead, I would hate my father for having ever planted me. I would look forward to the times when they, the students, faulted, so I could whip them. When the switch fell, I could feel it upon my flesh. Again, this is very Schopenhauerian, this kind of universal justice. When the switch fell, I could feel it upon my flesh. When it welted and ridged, it was my blood that ran. And I would think with each blow of the switch, now you are aware of me. Now I am something in your secret and selfish life, who have marked your blood with my own forever and ever. So kind of like a teacher from hell here, but at the same time, we see this desire where she wants to connect with people through physical action, and that's really what most of her monologue is about how words cheat people, and she's been cheated by words, and so has ants, and kind of all of them, and that having children has violated her, and she wants to connect through actual actions, through actually doing stuff. And this is why, partly she explains why she has this affair, which produces Jewel. She says here about words not meaning anything. She says, I hid nothing. I tried to deceive no one. I would not have cared. I merely took the precautions that he thought necessary for his sake. This was Whitfield. He's a minister, and he's having this affair. Not for my safety, but just as I wore clothes in the world's face. And I would think then when Cora talked to me of how the high dead words in time seem to lose even the significance of their dead sounds, right? So again, these words that they don't mean anything. And later at the end, she ends her monologue by saying, one day I was talking to Cora. She prayed for me because she believed I was blind to sin, wanted me to kneel and pray too, because people to whom sin is just a matter of words, to them salvation is just words too. And the implication there is that Cora, she hasn't sinned. She doesn't really know what sin is, and she's not going to really know what salvation is either. These are just words. But Addie, she's actually gone out and she's committed acts of sin, and she knows, and salvation is going to be something real for her. And her son, Jewel, is the one who basically saves her body several times. This is talked about throughout the book as well. So as the Bundrins are trying to get into Jefferson, the main town, they've already, the wagon's been destroyed, the body's fallen into the river. Later, soon they've got vultures following the smell. People are kind of repulsed as they go through the town. And at one point, they're staying at this guy Giuseppe's house, and Darl tries to burn the barn down that has Addie's body in it. Tries to end this, and for that, later when they get to Jefferson and they bury the mother, Darrell is arrested and taken to an insane asylum. It comes out through Cash that Dewey Dell has likely been the one that informed upon him, because when the police show up, she attacks him. But as Cash is looking on this, he makes some comments about insanity, which is, a bit closer to his brother in the reflective mode that he's speaking. He says, "Sometimes I ain't so sure who's got ever a right to say when a man is crazy and when he ain't. Sometimes I think it ain't none of us pure crazy and ain't none of us pure sane until the balance of us talks him that away. It's like it ain't so much what a fella does, but it's the way the majority of folks is looking at him when he does it." So insanity, according to Cash, in a large way, he's reflected on this concept of saying that this really has to do with how people look at you. And it's not so much what you do, but how people judge you on that. And then he ends with a very similar paragraph, but slightly more developed. He says, "But I ain't so sure that ever a man has the right to say what is crazy and what ain't. It's like there was a fellow in every man that's done a past, the sanity or the insanity, that watches the sane and the insane doings of that man with the same horror and the same astonishment." So he's imagining this person inside you, your kind of your soul, your identity, whatever you want to call it, who that's reflecting on what you're actually doing and making comments on that. But again, he's saying that it's almost arbitrary what we're calling sane or insane. It depends on the society structure that we have. Though he also condemns Darrell for burning this barn, which of course, as a carpenter, he's offended by this. So Darrell gets taken away. Cash, his leg has, they put some kind of makeshift concrete on it to try to fix it. So it's going to be ruined for life. Jewel has lost his horse. Dewey Dell has been essentially raped, tricked into sleeping with another man, a pharmacist, trying to get this medicine to have an abortion, and then gets her money taken from by her father. So the whole family is kind of in ruins, but then we see Ants at the end coming out with his new teeth. And this is how Cash sees him. "It was a fact. It made him look a foot taller, kind of holding his head up, hangdog and proud too." So this is Ants, his new teeth, making him appear taller, stronger. And then we see her behind him, carrying the other grip, a kind of duck-shaped woman all dressed up, with them kind of hard-looking pop eyes, like she was daring ever a man to say nothing. So it appears that Ants has gotten himself into another marriage with a woman who's stronger than he is, just like Addie was, which, at least in some readings of this book, is the reason for all the family's troubles. And there we sat watching them, with Dewey Dell's and Vardaman's mouth half open and half ate bananas in their hands, and her coming round from behind Pa, looking at us like she dared ever a man. And then I see that the grip she was carrying was one of them little gramophones. It was, for a fact, all shut up, as pretty as a picture, and every time a new record would come from the mail order, and us setting in the house in the winter listening to it. I would think, what a shame Darrell couldn't be to enjoy it too. But it is better so for him. This world is not his world, this life his life. It's Cash and Jewel and Vardaman and Dewey Dell, Pa says, kind of hangdog and proud too, with his teeth and all, even if he wouldn't look at us. Meet Mrs. Bundren, he says. So the novel ends on a kind of a comedic note. Ants gets a new wife same day he buries his old wife, but again, it would seem to be he's he's perpetuating the same, if we're reading this as a marriage, as kind of a criticism of marriage, he seems to be perpetuating the same problems that he had previous to this. Again, there are many other things to look at in this novel. Perhaps I'll make another video looking at some other parts. It's a rich novel. It's worthy to be read many times. There's much to get out of it. Thank you for listening.